channel. My name is Emma, also known as Made in the Moment, and today I'm going to show you how to make a mesh tank top. Here are 3 versions that I have made already. I absolutely love these. I can't pick a favorite. They're so much fun to make. Super quick project. If you like this video and want to see what else I'm up to, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Made in the Moment. I also have a Patreon if you want to support me financially. My Patreon has lots of free color work graphs and some exclusive videos that I will not be sharing anywhere else. So if you're interested in that, then go ahead and check that out. That's all I have for you. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Here is what you are going to need for this project. 50 grams of yarn. This is the Stitch & Story Bio Cotton Soybean Fiber Blend. It's really nice and soft, but you can use any yarn that you have on hand. I used a 10mm hook for really nice loose stitches. For one of them, I used a 15mm hook, so if you want even bigger, looser stitches, then you can do that. Then you will also need scissors, a yarn needle to weave in your ends, and a tape measure to measure yourself and your swatch. You will also need a smaller hook for connecting the panels and adding a small single crochet border around all of the edges. To practice the mesh pattern and to figure out how big you want your top to be, you're going to start by making a small swatch. The first thing you're going to do is make a slip knot, which you're going to put on your hook, and then chain 2. With a pattern like this, I like to start the first row with a foundation chain. So this is slightly different from chaining and then single crocheting into it. If you want a more in-depth video on how to foundation single crochet, then you can watch my tutorial on my channel. For now, I'll show you kind of quickly just how to do this. So you have your chain 2, you're going to put your hook into the first chain right here. You're going to yarn over and pull through. So you have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through just the first loop. This is going to act as the chain 1. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops on your hook. So essentially you are chaining and doing the first row of single crochet at the same time. Let me show you that again. You're going to insert into the space where you just chained 1, pull through, chain 1, and single crochet. So that's 2 stitches. You're going to keep going until you have 10. Once you finish your foundation chain of 10 stitches, you're going to chain 4 and turn your work. This mesh stitch is pretty simple because it's just the same row that you repeat over and over again. So you're going to chain 4, skip this first stitch right here, and go into the second stitch and make a single crochet. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, and then you're going to chain 4 again, skip this next stitch and go into the one after, and just repeat. Chain 4, skip a stitch, single crochet, and you're going to do this all the way to the end of the row. And you can see here we have just 1 stitch left. We're going to make a single crochet in this stitch, and on the last stitch of every row you're going to make a second single crochet into that same space. Then you're going to chain 4 and turn your work. On the second row, even though you have 2 single crochets here, you're just going to skip right to just the middle of this chain 4 space. The 2 single crochets just act to give the edges a little bit more structure. So chain 4, and then single crochet right into this space right here. Right into the chain 4 space. Chain 4, and then single crochet right into the chain 4 space. And when you get to the end again, going to make 1 single crochet and then make a second one. Again, chain 4 and turn your work. And you're just going to repeat this same pattern until you have 5 rows of this mesh crochet. Here's how to count the rows. I like to count the little spaces in between the chains. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's 6 rows. And once you've finished with your swatch, you're going to want to lay it out kind of like this. And I like to sort of stretch the bottom part out a little bit so it's laying flat. And then all of the mesh will kind of, it's not going to be stretched out like this, and it's not going to be stretched out like this. You want to sort of arrange it into a little bit of a square. You're going to measure across the bottom of your swatch along the foundation single crochet row. Mine is about 5 inches. And then measuring up this way, I'm going to measure across the middle. And this is about 4 inches. So this is unstretched. For an oversized fit, you're going to measure around the widest part of your bust and then add 2 inches to that. The widest part of my bust is 30 inches. I'm going to add 2 to that, which is 32, and then I'm going to divide that number by 2, so 16. So to figure out how many stitches I need at the bottom of my panel, I'm going to do a little bit of math. It's really easy. I'll show you how to set it up. You're going to do a ratio. On one side, you're going to set up the number of stitches in your swatch, and then the measurement of the swatch across the bottom. And I know that I want my panel to be 16 inches across, so I have to find how many stitches I need to start off. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply across the equal sign. So we have 10 times 16 is 160, and then 5, and let's just say this is x, so we have 5x. To get the x by itself, you're just going to divide both sides by 5. And 160 divided by 5 is 32. So I'm going to make a foundation chain of 32 stitches for my front and back panels. Before you go any further, you want to figure out how many rows you're going to do for each panel. So I've set up a similar equation as the other side. I know that my swatch was 6 rows tall, which measured 4 inches. The distance from the top of my shoulder to my waist, where I want the top to end, is 19 inches. And then I'm trying to figure out how many rows I'm going to make. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. So 6 times 19 is 114. And then we have 4x. 114 divided by 4 is 28.5. And I'm just going to round down to 28 because I think that will be plenty. So now I know how wide my panel is and how tall I want it to be. But because we're going to do a little bit of shaping on the neckline, I'm going to subtract 4 from whatever number I get here. So I'm actually going to do 24 rows before I go on to the neckline shaping. I hate keeping a swatch, so I'm actually just going to unravel this and use all of this to start my first panel. So if you do the same thing where you just unravel your swatch, then you can start with the same foundation chain that you had at the beginning and just add enough stitches to get to the number that you calculated just before, or you can start over and it's just going to be the same exact process where you are inserting your hook and making chain and then single crochet. So I'm going to do that until I reach 32. So at this point, you already know how to do a row, but I'll just show you the start of it again. You're going to chain 4, skip 1 stitch, single crochet, chain 4, skip a stitch, and single crochet. So I'm just going to do that for 24 rows, and then I will come back and show you how to do the shaping for the neckline. So once you have finished your rows that you need to, you're going to move on to make the little shoulder sections. So what I have done is I have marked the center stitch of my panel, and I just count kind of these chain 4 clusters as a stitch just to make it easier. So when I'm counting across, I count this as 1, 2, 3, and so on. So now I have this center stitch and I want to kind of lay all of this area around it flat. So it's a little bit stretched out, but not, stretched all the way, but also not scrunched up. And then I'm going to take my measuring tape and I want to measure out about 2.5 inches out from this center marker on either side, because we want about 5 inches in between the little shoulder sections. These line up pretty well actually, so I'll have one stitch marker here in this cluster, and then I'm gonna move this one to this cluster right here. And it's okay if it's not exactly 5 inches. It's not going to be exactly 5 inches when you wear it. It'll stretch out a little bit more, but that's how you're gonna measure it, kind of laid flat like that. So once you've figured out where your stitch markers are, this part is going to be the neckline. And so on our next row, you're basically just going to make rows going to here and then going up, instead of going all the way across and coming back. So I'm going to start my row with a chain 4 as before. Turn my work. And then I'm just going to keep going down the row until I get to my stitch marker. So here I've gotten to the stitch with my stitch marker. I'm going to put 2 single crochets into this last space, and then chain 4 and turn my work. And you're just going to repeat that until you have 4 rows of this little shoulder section. This is what it's going to look like. So here is our first row, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you're going to repeat that exact same thing on the other side of the shoulder. I will insert a clip of what this looks like held up to my body so you can make sure that the shoulder sections and the neckline are sitting about how they should be. And once you have done the 4 rows on this side, then you're going to do the exact same thing that you did for the whole panel, but for the back side it's going to be slightly different just at the top. So on the front, these shoulder sections are 4 rows tall, and on the back, they're just going to be 2 rows tall. So to make up the difference, you're going to add 2 more rows to the length of the body panel before you do the shoulder shaping. So for me, on the front panel, I did 24 rows before I did the neck shaping. On the back, I'm going to do 26 rows and then just 2 rows of the neckline shaping at the end. When you're reattaching your yarn on this side, you want to attach on the side away from the stitch marker. So what I like to do is just make a little slip knot. And I'm going to insert my hook into this corner chain 4 space here. Then place the slip knot on my hook, pull it through that space, and start my chain 4. And I'm just going to continue down the row as normal for 4 rows. So this is about where the neckline should sit on your body. You can obviously make it wider if you would like, but this is where I like it to sit. I'll be adding a couple rows of single crochet around the whole inside of the neckline to sort of finish it off. So it'll come in a little bit, but this is about where it sits. Once you finish the 2 rows for the neckline on the back, instead of cutting your yarn, you're going to switch out for the smaller hook and then grab your front panel. The great thing about this design is that there's not really a wrong side or a right side yet at this point. So you're just going to put the shoulders together, and using this small hook, you're going to chain 1 with the small hook and holding this shoulder together, you're going to insert your hook into this stitch on the back panel that you've just been working on, and then insert it into the corresponding stitch on the front panel. So this is the single crochet on the very edge. Yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 for a single crochet. You're going to repeat that again. Insert your hook into this second single crochet on the edge and into the second single crochet. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 for another single crochet. And now for these chain 4 spaces, you're going to make 3 single crochets, and then a single crochet into these 2 single crochets here. You can see how that lays nice and flat. If you do 4 single crochets in here, it'll just kind of spread out a little bit more, and we want these pieces to come in. And then in the next chain 4 space, we're going to do 3 single crochets. And 1 through both of these single crochets. And then in the very last corner, you're just going to make 2 single crochets, then chain 1 and cut your yarn, pull that through, and now you have one of the shoulders connected, and all that's left is to add 2 rows on this side. So I'm going to grab my larger hook, reattach the yarn in this corner, and then repeat the steps that I did on the other side. After attaching the shoulder sections together on this side though, you're not going to cut your yarn yet. You're going to immediately add a border for the neckline. So connecting these pieces is essentially the same on this side. You're just going to kind of start it backwards. So I'm going to turn my work and insert my hook into the first single crochet here and the first single crochet here. Then I'm going to single crochet, and from this point on it is exactly the same. And I'm just going to single crochet over this tail just so I don't have to weave it in later. Then when you get to the last corner, you're just going to single crochet 2. And now because we have this seam, this is the inside of the work. So you're going to turn things kind of inside out at this point. So now I have my seams on the inside, and you're probably gonna have to pull the ball of yarn through. You're going to go around the edge of the neckline and make a few rows of single crochets. How many rows you make is up to you. I'm going to just show you how to start. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing where each chain 4 space has 3 single crochets in it. So in this one, because it's on the corner, I already put 2 in it. So I'm just going to do the third one. And then this is like the chain 1 space. So I'm going to single crochet 1 there, going to single crochet 2 in here, and then 1 in this single crochet space. And now we've finished with the sideways chain spaces. So now these are the horizontal ones from before. So I'm going to single crochet 3, and then 1 into the chain 1, and just repeat that all the way around.
So I've made it back around, and to close up the row, I'm going to insert my hook into this first single crochet of the row and make a slip stitch. So here's what the neckline looks like at this point. It is a nice finished edge. I'm going to add one more row of single crochet though, just to make it a little bit wider. So to do that, I'm going to chain 1 and then just single crochet into each of the stitches that I already have on my neckline. So here is what the neckline looks with 2 rows of single crochet. You can definitely add more. You can also add ribbing if you prefer, kind of a different look here. But I like this one with 2 rows, so I'm gonna stick with that. So then you're going to cut your yarn. The way that you're going to figure out where you want the armholes to be is by just trying on this tank top and deciding how low you want them to be. I'll show you on me where I usually like to do it.
So when you're deciding where you want your armholes to be, you're going to try on the tank top, and I like to have really low holes for this kind of tank top. You can make it all the way up by where your armpits are, or you can make it kind of like a lower drop, like I'm showing you here. So once you find the place that you are comfortable with, then you're just going to take a stitch marker. You're going to mark on the front panel where you want the armhole to start, and then you're going to count up the same number of rows on the back side, and then the same number of rows on either side of the other side of your top. Once you have your markers placed and it all feels comfortable, then you're going to seam it all up.
The process for seaming up the sides is really similar to the top. When you're starting to seam up the sides, the one thing you want to do is make sure that you check that you are still inside out. You're going to start with a slip knot, and then insert your hook into this bottom corner, pull the slip knot through, chain 1 and single crochet into that same space. I like to crochet over the ends again so I don't have to weave them in later on. As you're going up vertically on the sides of these, you're going to put 2 single crochets into the chain spaces, and then same thing, 1 single crochet into the single crochet edges. So 2 into these chain spaces, and then 1 into the single crochet edge. Once you make it to your stitch marker, can take that out. And I like to end this seam with a single crochet into that single crochet space and not into one of the chain edges. And now we're going to do a very similar thing with the armhole that we did with the neck hole. And then you're just going to go around with a single crochet row. This will be the same thing, 2 single crochets into the chain space and 1 into the single crochet. And then to finish the row, you're going to do the same thing where you make a slip stitch, chain 1, and then keep crocheting around. And when you get to the end of the second row, you're just going to make another slip stitch, chain 1, and cut your yarn. And the last thing you're going to do is add a little border on the bottom edge. For this, I like to attach my yarn near one of these side seams that are a little bulkier so that I can weave the end in more easily. So I'm going to attach the yarn, chain 1, and make single crochets all the way around. Depending on how different the hook sizes are, you may want to do either 1 or 2 stitches in each of the larger stitches. I'm going to do 2 stitches with just 1 single crochet in them, and then 1 stitch with 2 in it. So 1, 2, and then this one will have 2. I find that that just keeps it laying flat, it's not coming in too much, and it's not flaring out too much. So I'm going to do that all the way around. And then once I get to the end, I am going to make a slip stitch, chain one, and cut the yarn. I am pretty much just going to repeat that for all of the rest of my ends, and then I will insert some clips of what this looks like on. If you make this vest and post about it, please tag me at Made in the Moment. I always love seeing what people make. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok to keep up to date with all of the rest of my pattern releases. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy!